You ever wonder how the universe actually works? I mean, at the deepest, most fundamental level. It's supposed to be this world of pure chaos and probability, right? And yet, whenever we actually look at it, whenever we measure something, we get a solid, definite answer. How does reality decide what to show us? Well, as it turns out, it follows a very specific rulebook. Okay, so let's just dive right into the heart of the mystery. You've got a particle that can be in a superposition, a whole cloud of possibilities at once. But when you go to measure its energy, you don't get some blurry average. Nope, you get a precise number. You get 5 electron volts. Not 5.1, not 4.9, just 5. Where does that certainty come from?
The answer, amazingly, isn't some fuzzy philosophical idea. It's a beautifully concise and incredibly powerful mathematical law. This theorem, right here, this is the bedrock. It's the foundation that connects all the abstract math of quantum theory to the concrete physical world we can actually see and measure.
So to really appreciate just how elegant this solution is, we first need to get a good handle on the pieces of the puzzle. What are we even dealing with when we try to measure something so fundamentally strange?
Okay, this is where you have to kind of rewire your brain a little bit. Before you measure it, a particle's energy isn't some fixed value just sitting there waiting. It's a potential, a property that we call an observable. It only snaps into being a real number at the exact moment of measurement.
And here it is. This is the bridge between the physical world and the world of math. This is the central rule, the linchpin for every single thing we can possibly measure. Position, spin, momentum, you name it, is represented by a special kind of mathematical tool called a Hermitian operator. This one idea is the key that unlocks everything.
All right, so if observables are represented by these operators, what in the world are they? To really understand the theorem, we need to meet the key players in our mathematical story. Let's think of them as the components of our measurement machine.
So first up is the operator itself. Just picture it as a little machine, a black box. You feed it a quantum state, which you can think of as an arrow, a vector, pointing in some direction in an abstract space. The operator then does something to it. Maybe it stretches it, maybe it rotates it, and then it spits out a new state.
Now, some of these states are really special. When you feed one of these particular states, we call them eigenvectors, into our operator machine, something cool happens. Their direction doesn't change at all. They just get stretched, longer or shorter. And that stretch factor, that's the eigenvalue. And here's the magic bit. The eigenvalue is the actual number that pops up on your measurement device. That's it. That's how the math connects directly to reality.
So why are Hermitian operators the stars of our show? Well, because they're the ones that keep things real. Literally. Their eigenvalues, those measurement results, are guaranteed to be real numbers. I mean, you can't measure your desk and find out it's 2 plus I feet long, right? That's nonsense. Hermitian operators are the mathematical bodyguards that make sure the results always respect physical reality.
Okay, so we've met the players. Now let's open up the rulebook they have to follow. The fundamental theorem really just boils down to 3 simple but totally profound rules.
First up, completeness. This basically means that those special measurable states are like a complete set of Lego bricks. Any possible quantum state you can dream up can be built by combining them. Second, orthogonality. This is a big one. If 2 of those special states give you different measured values, they are guaranteed to be totally independent of each other. Think of them as being at perfect right angles in this weird abstract space. And third, even in the strange case where different states give you the exact same measured value, we call that degeneracy, you can still set them up to be perfectly independent and orthogonal.
So those are the rules. But why? I mean, why are they the rules? Let's take a quick peek behind the curtain at the logic for that second rule, orthogonality. It all comes from a really beautiful, simple trick.
The logic comes from a brilliant little thought experiment. We're going to look at the exact same interaction between 2 states and our operator, but we're going to look at it from 2 different perspectives. The underlying result has to be the same, right? No matter how you look at it.
So from one perspective, we can say, all right, let's see what the operator does to state 2 first, and then see how that result lines up with state 1. The final answer is going to depend on the measured value from state 2. But we could also do it the other way around. Prepare state 1, let the operator do its thing, and then see how that affects state 2. Now the final answer depends on the value from state 1. Same interaction, just calculated in a different order.
And here is the absolute key. Because our operator is Hermitian, because it's one of these special well-behaved operators, it guarantees that both of those perspectives have to give you the exact same answer. The universe has to be consistent with itself.
When you set those two perspectives equal and just simplify the math, you get this incredibly clean equation. It says that the difference between the two measurement values, multiplied by how much the two states are aligned with each other, has to equal 0, period.
Now just think about what that means for a second. If our measured values are different, say one is 5 and the other is 3, then that first part of the equation is not 0. So for the whole thing to equal 0, that second part, the alignment, must be 0. There's just no other way. And what does 0 alignment mean? It means the states are perfectly independent. They're orthogonal. The math absolutely demands it.
So, what's the grand takeaway from all of this? We've gone through the rules, the logic. What's the big picture? Let's connect these ideas and see the profound picture they paint of our universe.
Think about the simple x, y, and z axes we use to describe 3D space, right? They're independent, they're all at right angles, and they provide a perfect reference system for everything. We call that an orthonormal basis. You can describe any point in space using just those 3 axes.
And here it is, the grand summary of the entire theorem. Those special measurable states, the eigenvectors, they form a perfect set of coordinate axes for the abstract space of all quantum possibilities. Each possible outcome is its own clean, independent direction.
This is the payoff. This is the whole shebang. For any property you could ever want to measure, energy, momentum, you name it, this theorem guarantees that there's a perfect, stable, independent set of possible outcomes that act as a complete coordinate system for that measurement. Measuring energy sets up one grid. Measuring position sets up a totally different one. This theorem provides the very framework for reality itself. Which, of course, leaves us with one final, mind-bending question. We've seen that the very act of asking a question, of making a measurement, forces reality to snap onto a specific grid of possibilities. So, what is the universe before we look? If we're the ones who provide the axes, what does the landscape of reality even look like when there's no map? And that is the enduring mystery of the quantum world.
All right, today we're going to tackle a really beautiful piece of linear algebra. So picture this. You've got a set of vectors. They're useful, sure, but they're kind of messy, right? Pointing all over the place. Now, what if I told you there's a step-by-step recipe to take all that chaos and turn it into perfect geometric order? Well, there is, and we're about to dive right in.
So let's just put the question right out there. How in the world do you take a bunch of unruly vectors and actually force them into perfect alignment? I mean, it sounds like a really tough problem, but the solution you'll see is surprisingly elegant.
Okay, first things first, let's meet the characters in our little story today. We're starting out with a set of vectors that, they've got potential, but they aren't quite ready for the big leagues. And that's the vector dilemma.
So, over on the left, that's where we're starting. We've got what are called linearly independent vectors. And that's a good thing. It means none of them are redundant, they each bring something unique to the table. But our goal, what we're aiming for, is on the right. It's something way better, an orthonormal set. I mean, this is basically the gold standard for a set of vectors.
So what exactly does orthonormal even mean? Well, it's just a mashup of two pretty simple ideas. The ortho part comes from orthogonal, which just means every single vector in the set is at a perfect 90-degree angle to all the others. And the normal part? That means they've all been normalized to have a length of exactly 1. So they're perfectly angled and perfectly sized.
Now you might be asking, why does any of this matter? Well, this isn't just a math puzzle. This problem shows up in real physical systems. Take quantum mechanics, for example. You can have these things called degenerate states, where different states have the exact same energy level. This gives you a set of vectors that are totally independent, but they're not perfectly organized, and that's exactly when you need a tool to come in and clean things up.
And that tool, the hero of our story, is the Schmidt procedure. It's a specific, it's reliable, and honestly, it's a pretty beautiful method for solving this exact problem.
What's so cool about this solution is that it's not just some formula you mindlessly plug numbers into. No, it's a constructive process. It literally builds the new, perfect set of vectors step by step, right in front of you.
So, how does this whole thing work? Well, the first step is actually the easiest, and it gives us the foundation for everything else. Let's forge our very first perfect vector.
So how do we make it? It's incredibly simple. We just grab our first messy vector, we'll call it v1, and we normalize it. And that's just a fancy way of saying we divide the vector by its own length. That's it. Seriously.
And just like that, boom, we have our first official member of our brand new orthonormal set. We call it v hat 1. It points in the exact same direction as our original vector, but now its length is perfectly, exactly 1. One down, a few more to go.
Okay, now we get to the really clever part. This is the heart of the whole procedure. I like to call it the orthogonal trick. This is how we're going to build our second vector, and we do it by getting rid of everything that isn't perfectly perpendicular to the first one.
The main idea here is purification through subtraction. It's brilliant. We take our second messy vector, v2, and we figure out which part of it is sort of in line with our new perfect vector, v hat 1. You can kind of think of it as its shadow. Then we just subtract that shadow away from v2, and guess what? Whatever is left over has to be perfectly orthogonal. Okay, so here's how it works, broken down into 3 steps. First, we project v2 onto our new v hat 1. This is what finds that shadow component I was talking about. Second, we take that projection and subtract it from the original v2. The vector we're left with is now guaranteed to be at a right angle to v hat 1. And finally, you know the drill. We normalize it. We divide it by its length, and we get our second perfect unit vector, v hat 2.
And there you have it. We've built v hat 1 and v hat 2. We now have 2 vectors that are perfectly perpendicular to each other, and they both have a length of exactly 1. And here's the crucial part. They still define the exact same two-dimensional space as our original v1 and v2 did. We didn't lose any information, we just organized it perfectly.
So this is the really important point. This elegant little procedure isn't just a neat trick for 2 vectors. Its real power, its true magic, comes from the fact that you can scale it up to any number of dimensions.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The source material says it best. Quote, "We can extend this procedure to larger sets of linearly independent vectors in more dimensions. This is not a one-off trick. It's a fundamental, powerful algorithm." I bet you can already see the pattern, right? If you had a third vector, v3, you'd just do the same thing. You'd subtract its projection onto v hat 1, and then subtract its projection onto v hat 2. Whatever is left is automatically orthogonal to both of them. Then you just normalize it, and you've got your v hat 3. The process just keeps going. So let's wrap this all up. What are the big takeaways here? Well, we start with a problem. Our useful vectors aren't always perfectly lined up. The tool to fix this is the Schmidt procedure. And how does it work? It's a simple process. You normalize, then you subtract the parts that aren't orthogonal. And the payoff is huge. You get a perfect orthonormal set that describes the same space and can be scaled up to any dimension you could possibly need.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This whole procedure takes a messy but valid system and just applies a simple, elegant set of rules to create perfect order. It really makes you wonder, what other complex systems out there, maybe in science or data, or even in our own lives, are just waiting for the right elegant procedure to come along and bring them into order? Thanks for tuning in.